What's going on?
Praise
What's
the Lord.
going on, brother?
All right, man. Hey, we building as we fly.
Absolutely. I think I actually like the minute one. We were discussing this intro before coming in. I like the 28 seconds one when we're just recording and it's not live. But
Yeah.
I kind of want to get the feel of it. You see live flashing up, and we're live, people. Community Beacon. Shouts out to you all who are checking in with us. I'm Michael Seville. Of course, on the other side of the screen, we got the incomparable Joel Simmons. Mic
Yes,
check,
yes,
mic
yes,
check.
yes, yes, yes. In the
Oh,
house, in the building, next to my man, the number one real estate king of all of Florida. Yeah, Michael Seville.
I really feel it when you say it. When you say it, it makes a difference.
Ah,
When you when you feel it, it evokes emotion. Where I
yeah,
can
that's real,
visualize the
man. That's
number
real.
one. Shouts out to everybody. We are going live today. It is Friday. It's Community Beacon. We definitely appreciate each and every one of you for checking in. Last week we had a very spirited conversation. Um, hopefully, I think we have. Did we go live last week as well?
Yes, we went live
Okay.
last week as well.
Okay. So two lives in a row. So we're
Two lives. Good gracious.
having some form of consistency. Although the consistent part is that we do get you a show every Friday. I think we may have missed twice, and some of those were just because I didn't upload an
We didn't
episode.
hit the button.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. Y'all should have seen me behind the scenes
Yeah.
today. I'm trying to hit a lot of buttons. Mike normally does all these descriptions and stuff. I am sitting there like I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm dropping stuff here and dropping it there, opening this and closing that. Didn't even realize all of that work my brother was doing. So definitely appreciate you. That's 100.
Absolutely, it's good to fit. It's good to be appreciated. All right, let's without I know Rick Hartman hates when I say without further ado. He doesn't like further ado because it's much ado about nothing. It actually means nothing.
Gosh,
Um,
much ado about nothing. They
uh,
made a movie out of that, didn't they?
yeah. They made a movie about it out of that, but let's get into it. This week, what is it? Own your path, embracing responsibility. Last week we really got into being intentional, and so we'll gander down that path a little bit. There was an awesome question that was asked last week, like how much time are you spending in order to come up with the values that you're aligned with, specifically in a familial context. Like how much time are we spending to do this, and that kind of led to like how intentional are we being. And here's what I've started to realize is that without intention, it makes it a little harder to to be responsible for things because you kind of like leave it up to whatever momentum, whatever momentum you leave it up to chance, so to speak. So anytime you leave something up to chance and then something happens, it's a little bit more difficult for people to take responsibility for it. When you put what you have going on, your results in somebody or something else's hands, then you're leaving it up to chance, and it's easy. It's almost like a cop out, right? Like
Mm.
oh well, it's the weather. It was raining. That's why this didn't happen, or this person didn't do this. That's why I didn't get this done. When you're intentional on doing things, you kind of sometimes you bring those things into consideration, but oftentimes you don't leave it up to chance. It's like preparation. You start to prepare for whatever's coming up. What's your thoughts, brother? And as we dive into this conversation.
Man, I'm feeling what you're saying. This whole thing about intentionality has changed my life. I mean, just not allowing my life just to be my life simply because it is my life. I think that's one of the key factors. When you're a youth, when you're growing up, it's like, hey, you just live for the day. Oh, man, let me tell you. So, driving down the road, getting ready to come home, preparing myself, I desired to take my son out and get him a pair of shoes. And we're unable to get him these shoes, right? So we're coming down this road, and he starts to tell me about how he feels as if time is just going fast. I'm like, what do you mean? 13 years old. So I mean, he was young like 2 years ago. I mean, when he starts to talk about his younger days, it's like 11. Oh, it's just kind of funny. And he's telling me, he's like, yeah, Dad, it's just like time is going by so fast.
Mhm.
I'm like, really? He's yeah. When I was a kid,
When he was a kid.
it, it seemed like it took an hour for things to happen. Huh? Say that again? When I was a kid, it seemed like it took like a whole hour for something to happen. Man, I busted out laughing. I'm like, an hour? I love to have an hour.
Right, right.
An hour, an hour is nothing right now. I mean, an hour goes by so listen, a half hour, 45 minutes went by so fast while I'm trying to get this
Come
description
on.
together. I'm thinking it was taking 2, 3 minutes. I look up at the time. I'm like, nah, we're not going live at 3. We're about to not go live at 3:30. I mean, and I'm looking at this thing, Mike, and I'm like, wow, what's going on? So then he tells me, so I say, so what is time like now? And he says, yeah, it's like before it took 48 hours. A day was like 48 hours. Like, okay, all right. He's like, but now it's more like, it's not an hour, it's 30 seconds. I said, so a day lasts about 6 hours in your mind. He said,
Mhm.
yeah. Like, what is happening right now?
That's an interesting conversation.
This is a very interesting conversation. I'll bring my little piece in on this. It's just like intentionality.
Hmm.
That's what it is. He intends to do something with his time. And now that I am introducing things into his schedule, he does not have the direct influence over when he's able to do what he desires to
Mm.
do. So all of a sudden, time is flying by because hey, listen, go take out the trash. You need to go take care of your chores. Go wash the dog. Go walk the dog. Hey, listen, I need you to go ahead and clean the garage. Hey, come on over here. See that the steps need to be repaired. I showed him how to repair steps. Go repair the steps. Time for you to read. You haven't been reading. You owe me 2 hours. So all of a sudden, it's like, man, I got all these things to do. And then his mom gives him things to do. And now he does not have time to play the video game.
Mm.
So time is flying by because all that time that he's kind of poking around trying to make his chores last forever is eating up his day. And by the time he gets to his video game, it's like, hey, time to go to bed. Where did the day go?
Where did it go?
Being intentional.
I didn't get to do what I wanted to do. And it sounds as if you're adding structure to his day and his time. So this gives him a chance to be even more intentional about what it is that he's doing. I heard you say that he's spending time to do his chores or whatever, but when he knows that there's something else on the other end of it, the video game time that he wants, that he values, and it's fun to him. Um, Now he's like, okay, well, I need to structure my time. I need to start to structure this time. See, and this is an important lesson I would think a person would learn, especially at this age, because what ends up happening is most people don't even do that. You got a bunch of people who have no intentionality because their time isn't structured, and so what happens is that years go by. Well, excuse me. Start off with days go by, weeks go by, months go by, years go by, and it's like, man, I didn't get anything done. And so then what happens is then you begin to be introduced into this immediate gratification thing, this microwave where you know I can't do 10-minute abs. It has to be 6-minute abs at this point because I've wasted a year and now it's time for the summertime, and I'm supposed to be going to these beaches and these parties, and I want to have this washboard stomach. But because I hadn't done anything up until this time, I need to get this thing done quickly. Well, whose fault is that? Then once again, now here it goes back to what I was speaking about earlier, is the excuses come in. Oh, well, it was Memorial Day, or it was I had this birthday party to attend. It was Father's Day, Mother's Day, like whatever it is, or somebody cooked the food. So it's everybody's else's fault but our own because we're not intentional about what we have. There's a bunch of things in this. So there's like a lack of clarity when you're not intentional. There's a lack of organization when you're not intentional. There's a lack of, and ultimately all this kind of adds up to a lack of results because you're not intentional. Quick story time. Not even story time. Example. Prior to us getting on this call, I was telling Joel, I was saying that I was talking to my coach. So we had like a 2 hour conversation. And there was a lot of things that were said and done in this conversation that this needs to be done. What's our next steps, so on and so forth. And and I was thinking about the amount of time that I've spent, not necessarily in his program, but overall in this instruction. This is the NLP, and I've done 18 months of following this model,
Mm,
like 18 months. And when I look back on it, it's like the first month, it was the information was so overwhelming that I would often find myself like falling asleep during the sessions, like a 30, 40 minute session because I wasn't wired to kind of you know, do the model like how it's supposed to be done. It was like tiring. Now I'm at the point where it's almost done like automatically. Like it's my subconscious is taking over. It just happens. But then there's this 2 hour check-in with this certain coach. And I mean, if I were to give someone this information, it would be overwhelming because there's so much things that we covered within 2 hours that it probably took me a good 3 to 6 months to do. But it was just being intentional about this inch by inch of getting to where it is. Like none of this stuff is done in a vacuum.
mm,
Every everything that we do, it happens over time. So either we're being intentional about these things happening over time to where it gets easy to where we're competent at this point it's unconscious competence, but it started off with unconscious uncompetent. Like I wasn't even knowing that I was competent or that I was uncompetent about these different things, these different steps that we're doing. It's just over time. So for you to do this with your son, where it starts now, and for him to now become aware, because this is where it starts. Like now he's like, I don't even like where's this time going? So now he's aware of the time where before it wasn't. He's not aware of the time. I got Elijah as well. And Elijah can spend all day doing absolutely just to me nothing. He's doing something, but he's on his phone. He's laid in the bed. He's probably playing video games. He walks out to the kitchen. He eats a little bit. He drinks a little bit, then it's another video game or it's whatever, and it just seems like that just time is there. But once you start to introduce structure, once you start to say, okay, he washes the dog as well. The dog needs a bath as well. Okay, what time? Because if you leave it up to them, it'll be whatever time. Well, what time are you going to do this? Oh, 5 o'clock. Okay, great. Now he has to start prioritizing things. Now he has to start putting things in place. Like if he was going to talk to a friend, and he knows his friend doesn't have his phone at 6 or 7, but he has to wash the dog at 5. So he needs to have this conversation at 2 or 3. So he starts to become intent, especially after he misses this, misses whatever it was that he was thinking he was going to have. This time with his friend playing the video games or going somewhere. He has to start structuring his life in a way that he gets things done that I'm asking him to do, his chores or whatever it is, and also things that he would like to do eventually. So now he has to be more intentional with his quote unquote time. Then from that intentionality, we start to become more efficient with our time. We start to let things go that aren't necessarily important to us
mm.
because we no longer have the time or we don't want to put forth the focus or the effort on this thing because we want to focus on what we in our minds, our fathers or mothers, our parents want us to get done, which is a priority because it needs to happen. And then it goes to them, and then we want to do our things that we're aligned with. Go ahead, brother. I see you.
Mm. No, man, I'm with you, man. I wanted to jump on in, see if we can get a little closer shot too. Maybe move the camera
Move
over
this
just a
over.
little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can do that.
Ah, there it is.
Yeah,
You got
yeah, yeah.
that. Boy, that's that real camera right there. Man, listen, this intentionality is, I think it's a real thing. I think that is something that we definitely need to be focused on, just as men in general, because a lot of the things that we are finding, or a lot of the things that I have found when I'm talking with men and when I'm talking with people, for that
Hmm.
matter, that are having different types of concerns inside of their life, is we're allowing things to happen to us.
Yep.
And I think that's where we picked up off from last week. I gave an example about going into a store and said, "Well, what if someone were to rob you or something like that?" And your response was, "We cannot be. You're not responsible for the person pulling the gun trying to rob you or something, but you are responsible for what you did before, what you do then, and what you do after." So whether we, hey, listen, I want your chain, you give it to them or you fight over that. All of those things are a part of what we're responsible for. But the intentionality of it does change everything. Why am I doing what I'm doing? So when
Hmm.
I start to talk about my wife or I'm talking about my children, I have found that when I am intentional about what I am about to do with my children, it begins to shine. And that's something that I didn't necessarily recognize before. I mean, I feel like when I look back into the history of my life, that I was very intentional about what I was doing, but I didn't recognize that I was being intentional. And that's a strange thing. That's a strange thing. I mean, we're at this level inside of our life now, Mike, where we think about these things. Like we've had multiple episodes where we talk about how words matter. And because words matter, now I find myself thinking about the words or the actions that support the words that are fluid in my life or that I am actively utilizing inside of my life. So when I say I'm going to service, there's an intent behind me to go to my church service. But when I think I'm going to my church service, I think I'm going to my church service. And then the intention behind those words is I will be active in my church service, which means that I will sing in my church service. I will preach in my church service. I will help lift someone up in my church service. I will bring offering to my church service, sacrifice to my church service, tithe to my church service. I will be 100% present in my church service. So, all of those things are incorporated in this one word, me saying, I'm going to church. By me saying I'm going to church service, it means all of that. That is my intention. I have defined it. And it's much like, like I think it's called Gemini. The program's called Gemini, artificial intelligence. And I was really curious about it. But what they've done is, in order for you to be able to speak to artificial intelligence about certain things, what they've done is they've taken pictures of multiple things and then they've coded those things, because the way that the computer sees things is just like Neo in the Matrix when they're looking at the green symbols going down the screen. That's the way that
The
AI.
ones and zeros.
Right, right. All it is just symbols. It's just codes. So in order for Gemini to see this water bottle, what they do is they take one water bottle, they hold the one water bottle up, then they get another water bottle, and they just keep on saying water bottle, water bottle, water bottle, water bottle, water bottle. And they get all these different shapes and sizes of water bottles so that when someone types in the keys water bottle, a vast amount of water bottles will show up, but a juice bottle will not. A soda bottle will not, because all of the description of what the water bottle is with inside of that code word water bottle. So the intention is laid out for AI to be able to recognize the very pictures, so that when someone types a word, AI is able to search through codes, letters, and numbers and find the appropriate codes that match at a high level. This is huge, because this is what we as human beings are doing every single day. When we grow up and we're little bits in kindergarten, they are taking pictures and they're showing us pictures so that we can understand colors. They're teaching us code. They're programming our brains. They take
Mhm.
out an orange, a fruit, and they say orange. They take out an apple, a red apple, and they say red. They take out a banana, a yellow banana, and they say yellow. So then they define that these objects are those colors. Now, if they don't go back and teach the other end that the orange is an orange, that the red apple is an apple, that the yellow banana is a banana, then the kids still may not know that those are actually pieces of fruit. They would just know that those are colors, and they would associate those colors as the fruit. And so there has to be this separation within inside of that conversation. Now, I know that's kind of like a tangent. So my whole point is that being intentional is just like that. It is setting up the code inside of our minds of exactly what is supposed to happen, what we are supposed to do. It is about putting purpose behind our words and our actions and our thoughts. And it's about being deliberate so that there cannot be room for error. When we do that inside of our relationships, things change.
And I'll go back to what you we spoke about. Words matter. This is, I mean, naturally we wouldn't be doing this show if we weren't aligned on certain things. But so we come up with a lot of these different things, like words matter because we value communication. So because we know we value communication, we spend time intentionally to further define these things and make distinctions in regards to it. How do we better it? Then we ended up with relationships change because the brother values relationships. So if I'm going to value the relationship, then the way that I communicate, and this goes back to the way that I communicate, and I value communication, I value relationship, I'm going to do these different things intentionally. So I think that for this entire conversation, initially, it's like figuring out what it is that you value. That's kind of what we spoke about last week. Like it starts with like, what do we value? I'm not because you shouldn't value everything that I say. Tell you to value. You have your own. It's your own way of valuing things and how you value these things. What happens is we're not intentional on how we value these things. So what we tend to do is we start to violate these values that we have within ourselves. Really, most of our values are probably already established by the time we're 7 to 10 years old. Like by the time you're 10, you've already come up with certain values. It takes some work to no longer value these things. It takes some work to take a step back and look at these things and say, well, why is it that I value these things? That's why understanding and knowing your history or your pathology is so important. But once you figure these things out, then the intentionality, I would imagine, once you become aware of it, then the intentionality happens. Now you can start to do things and not stray far from it. And if you do stray from it, you notice when you did.
Mm,
Like if I value relationships within my family and I'm having a bad moment, I have a bad moment, whatever happened, a bad day, let's call it a bad day. And I come in and I yell at somebody and I go to my room and that was it. Once I realize that if I know that I value this person that I yelled at, kid, significant other, or whatsoever, now I can go back and I can take responsibility. I can embrace the responsibility of going back and correcting that. Hey, listen, I was just having a bad day. How many times is it that we cannot apologize for something or we can't come to it because we don't even know that we violated something that we
right.
did? If I don't know that I value family, if I don't know that I value, you know how much time I think I spend. I know the brother does as well. I'm in sales as well, so I speak with a lot of people. How much time I spend intentionally working on communication in the mirror, having conversations in the mirror, waking up early in the morning and working on communication because I value communication. I also know that it's going to lead to something, right? But I value communication. I spend time on that. How can I communicate better? How can I change my tone? Oh, this when I say this word, it triggers somebody. So I no longer need to say this word. Or sometimes when I'm being mean, I'll say the word because I know it triggers somebody. I know it triggers. I do it to my dad all the time. Shh, don't tell him.
Gosh, man.
And I'm gonna tell you what, some people who value communication. We can take any of these people who are very probably influential on YouTube or some of our favorite reporters or interviewers like Oprah. You think Oprah doesn't spend time on her communication? It just doesn't come out like that. Maybe she has some natural tendencies towards it, but it also takes time and work in order to master what it is.
Mm,
Intentionally doing it. The same mentor, the coach that I spoke about earlier, his name is Daniel Nouveau. If you ever get a chance to go on Google, you can check him out. Daniel Nouveau. No, I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly. He has one of the richest voices that you'll ever hear. He sounds similar to like a Morgan Freeman. And I
mm.
remember I had a conversation with him in regards to his voice. I said, you have like one of those radio voices. And he said he spent hours getting this voice down. He said, I wanted a better voice. I wanted to speak. And so in order for me to speak, I had to start doing all these different training exercises, working on my voice, working on my enunciation, working on how I come across, working on my cadence. I'm telling you, if you listen to him, he just has this Morgan Freeman rich voice. And I would imagine if you talk to Morgan Freeman, he would tell you the same thing as well. Morgan Freeman, what's my guy from The Lion King? Mufasa, the
Um,
older guy, Coming to America, Jones,
Jeff,
Ray.
Jeff. No, I was about to say Jeff. 'Cause I know that's wrong.
If
I
you're
know.
if you're watching this, you're gonna say King Joffrey Jofer. Is that what you?
Uh,
That's what that's who I'm talking. That's who I'm talking about. But if you're watching this, you can put it in the comment section. James Earl Jones. There
James
we go.
Earl Jones.
James
You
Earl
got it.
Jones. You so if you want to be better at the not better, if you want to operate at your best, you start to become intentional about this thing. And when he's told me, my coach, how long it took him, I'm like, wow, you put in time. He's like, yeah, I was driving and I'm speaking, a certain kind of way. I'm doing these different exercises. It's hours and hours, but I'm intentional about it because it's not going to happen tomorrow, but a year, 2 years down the line, then you have a rich radio voice like the one that he has. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because you're intentional about these things, just like we should be. And this is kind of once again we left off this conversation from the last episode, because we value relationships, familial relationships. How much time are we taking out to be intent? Not time. How much focus and effort are we doing in order to become better at this? How do we develop, like, for our families, for our friends, whatever context it is? How much focus and effort are we putting on figuring out what do we value within these things so that we can show up as our authentic self, like to and there's no confusion. Imagine how many conversations or really miscommunication is happening because we're not clear on what it is that we do. We spoke about common sense. Common sense doesn't become common, the brother said last week, because we don't make it common. So no one knows exactly where we stand because we because we don't know where we stand. We don't know exactly our values. So then we don't take responsibility for it. It's always somebody else's fault. Man, this is where we go. It's always a woman's fault. The woman is this, or the woman is acting this way. The
Mm.
This is going on. She raised her voice. She was unstable. You're not gonna talk to me like that. Did you tell her? Did you have that conversation? Does this other person know when they're disrespecting you, when they're disappointing you?
Mm,
when this thing is happening, or is it just left up to chance or only
mm,
for correction? When we come now we got to correct you. How you correcting someone and you never told them in the first place? That's not correction. That's really imposing yourself on somebody.
mm,
If you've never came out and said something to somebody or explained to them, this is my boundary, this is what I do and this is what I don't do, then there's really no correction. This is just you being a bully. This is not leadership. This is really just bullyism. So now, and then we wonder, ask me how I know. Then we wonder why people walk around on eggshells because they don't even know what to do. They don't know how to take because you've never came out and said it because you don't know yourself. So now people are walking out, and I don't know if anybody's ever heard this before when someone says, "Well, I'm walking on eggshells around you." And you may say, "Oh no, that's just some passive aggressive way of having this conversation." It's common sense. Everybody should know. We know now that that's not the case. Common sense has to be drilled in over. We have to be intentional
mm,
about instructing this common sense. Treat everybody just like especially when you first meet them, like a child. Don't go out in the middle of the street. Well, the child doesn't know that. It's not common sense for this child to know. The child doesn't know that this truck is not going to stop. They see the cartoons all the time where they come to this abrupt stop. You know what I mean?
mm,
So I got time. This car can stop just like that. When we know that if this car is going 40, 50 miles an hour, it's going to take them, and the brother may know longer than me, but there's a certain amount of feet that the car needs. And we're not even talking about whether the brakes are working properly, whether this is happening. So we have to be aware for that. But if you don't tell someone, then they don't know. Right. So it's like we have to start being intentional about these different things. And it starts with the value. Start figuring out for yourself, what do I value? Okay, so I value this. How can I increase my skill with these different things? What do you think, bro?
mm. I like it. You just reminded me of another situation that happened a little earlier today with my son and I. We were walking through the parking lot, and as we walked through the parking lot, he said, "Dad, hey, you remember what you told me about the red lights?" And I said, "Yeah." He was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, the red lights. What was that again?" I said, "Always watch for red lights. Red lights mean that a car is backing up. You see it, but it does not mean that they see you."
Right.
And that's what I taught him. So whenever we were out there, of course, I was holding his hand, especially as he was a young boy. But it was like, hey, always look for red lights. So him and his brother, they would stop me. Hey, Dad, red lights. Even if it was 7 cars down. I mean, the car is nowhere near us, but they were looking for red lights. They were intentional. And now, 6 years later, 7 years later, he's reminding me of that lesson that he learned such a long time ago. And that goes to tell you how scripting works. He
Mm,
didn't even remember all of the words that I said, but he knows red lights and he knows cars backing up. That's what he remembers. That tells you a whole lot. That's one thing about the lessons of intentionality. I think that when we teach these lessons with intentionality, it shows who we have become, because some of these lessons are not taught with intentionality. Sometimes, as parents, we are teaching our young people, our children, to do things because it's right.
mm,
And it's not because we are intentionally teaching them to do something that is right. It is because, hey, this is just the way that it was done. And now it doesn't always have to be right. It's just the way that it was done. When we wake up as parents and we start to do things intentionally, I think it takes it to the next level, because now when the child comes to us and says, well, why? We have a reason. There's a reason why I'm doing it. And I believe that at the point that you can give a reason why you are saying what you're saying or doing what you're doing, I believe at that point you have moved from just haphazardly teaching your youth to intentionally teaching your young person to do something that will be beneficial to them. When it comes down to our wife or maybe a girlfriend, then here's a question, because Mike, you brought it up. You start talking about values. Have we ever had the conversation? I mean, I love the way you brought that in, because it's like, did we ever even talk about this?
Until the time came up, right?
Because maybe the reason why she is talking the way she's talking is because we never had that conversation. She's blindsided. Blindsided is not where anybody wants to be. So now if she's upset, what good is it that I'm doing by telling her, "Hey, we should be doing it this way?" I think
Hmm.
we had this conversation the other week, Mike. I don't know if I put it on air, but I'll bring it up now. I was sitting there and I was at my job, and there was something special. There was a special program going on for the entire week. And I wanted my family to attend that program every single night. But I had not made that clear. What I did make clear was that I was going to be there every night. What I did make clear was that if I was there, my son was going to be there with me every single night. But what I didn't make clear was that when I was gone for 2 days working, that the same thing was supposed to happen. I called home and I asked, "Hey, what's going on?" And I got word that they were doing something different, and it hurt me. I said, because I wanted them to do what I had set in motion.
When you say hurt, explain when you what do you mean by hurt?
What I mean by hurt, I mean by it bothered me. It frustrated me. It called me a little angst, because what I wanted to have happen was no longer happening. And the only thing that I could have done was just tell people to do what they were not doing.
Mm,
And I thought about it. I ended up talking with Mike about it. And I told him this. I said, the things that they were doing were things that they valued.
right.
The things that I wanted to do, the program was something I valued. But because we did not share our values with each other,
Communication.
because there was no communication regarding the value, my value versus their value, when it came down time for a decision, a fork in the road,
Hmm.
the only thing that I could have done was muscle my way through,
Hmm.
force my way through. Now, I could have caused the uproar because I'm the man of the house. I could have roared. But why would I roar? Why would I show up as the lion? Why would I force my way when I had never prepared my way?
Mm.
That thing hit me, y'all. It hit me like a ton of bricks, because I thought on that. And then later in that discussion, Mike, he asked a question at the end of that community beacon. He asked a question: how much focus and energy are we putting in to ensure our values or our value system within our family? And that thing hit me, y'all. I sat back and I had to talk with Mike after we got off of the meeting, because I sat back and I was like, this was my answer. Now, I didn't answer anything else because I'm not going to call myself wise, but I just realized at the moment of me answering that the only thing that I could have done was to strike up a argument and to
Hmm.
push my argument. And instead of pushing my argument, I decided I would hold my peace, leave them in their peace, and I would contemplate what was going on a little bit further. And because of that, by the grace of God, we ended up having the perfect conversation that answered my concerns. And when I came out of that conversation, I realized, hey, listen, I did the right thing. But then I started to think about how many times had I not done that right thing? And how many times have guys come to me asking me about this exact same thing? And me from the outside looking in, I'm able to instruct them. Listen, brother, this, that, the other.
Mhm.
But today was my day when I was blindsided by my own inability to prepare a way for something that I thought was so important that I
Yeah.
told nobody else. I thought it was so important that I told nobody else how important it was to me. That no, that means it wasn't that important. And I was going to blame somebody else for not understanding what I had not communicated. So when I ask this question is, guys, how many times are we standing there with our wife and we're upset because she should have known and we have never made it clear how valuable, not how important, not how it makes us upset, not how it should be because it's the right thing to do. No, we've never made it clear that our value system is wrapped around this thing,
Hmm.
that we're living and breathing by this value system. And that when someone runs against it, it hurts us to the core because our values have been broken and we feel as if we are no longer together. How many times have we made it that clear so that when the day comes, we don't have those types of issues? What do you say, bro?
I love it, and I want to be clear on this as well. Is that this is not to say that everything would be is going to be perfect
Yeah.
moving from this point on forward. It's just that now, it's especially when you're dealing with somebody else, there's some accountability there. There's some kind of understanding, at least there. And if something does happen, how do we get back on track? Well, we go back to this value system. What ends up happening oftentimes because we don't have these conversations, and I would advise that you get your value system together initially, because it's a lot easier to start off with an understanding and communicating the values than to go in there and it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the line and you start establishing it. You're trying to make a correction to this thing that has went on for so long by not being clear about what it is, and but it happens. But what happens is we get into a place of initially of disrespect and disappointment. But I love what you said, because it was like, no, I need to be accountable for this thing. Like I'm now, this is where the embracing responsibility comes to mind, and comes into play. Now I can be response able, because, oh, whoa, this is not broken, but it's violating the value system that I have. And so I need to figure out, now I'm going to be my response. My Now that I'm response and able, I'm going to figure out a way of how do I have this conversation and communicate this. And it doesn't come from a place of, yeah, initially it might be anger. Let's be clear on that too. You might feel some things might come up, disappointment, anger, disrespect. We can say that, but now we can start to use our thoughts on how do we not allow this to happen again. And if it does happen again, then people know exactly what it is, because
Mm,
we've had this conversation. I want to go back to the point of you speaking on your son in the red light, because I think that was very important, because you're teaching him this red light thing, and then you said it's important for us to be able to explain, not because it's always been done, because it's the right thing to do and it's always been done, but when you're able to explain this with the reasons for it, you're teaching then now that you're giving them this critical thinking skill, you're
mm,
giving them this now, which leads way to discernment, because now we can start to say, well, the red light means this, but now critical thinking means that I don't got to stand here this entire time. I can go across the street and be more efficient and intentional, whatever it is, to get to where I'm going. But I can do it in a safe way. Or even when I'm planning on going someplace, I'm like, well, I'm not going to go this place because last time I went there, there was a bunch of red lights. The red light, this doesn't just mean to stop. The reason why the red light means this way is because there's traffic, and I need to be aware of this thing. So now I can start to work with these rules, but I still have this baseline foundation. This now I'm able to think about what it, not just because I'm doing it because dad says. And then when we get into our rebellious ways, we start to go against it because we were fully. I don't know why he said this.
Yeah.
Oh, even with this conversation in this specific example with you and your wife, and this conversation that you all had, it's not that this it goes from rigidity, which is what it would have been if it was just a complete correction. Like, nah, this showing up as this lion, so to speak. It becomes this critical thinking. Now, I heard a brother say the other day, he says, love anticipates needs.
Mm,
So now,
that's very
because
good.
you have this love, she can start to anticipate your needs because she understands your value system.
She
Because you
understands,
have
right.
this love, you get to anticipate her need, which is kind of what you did. Because you said whatever it was that she ended up doing, you were like, "Well, I'm not going to disturb her peace,
Mhm.
and I get to sit on this for a little bit and take accountability for it, but I'm not going to disturb her peace because that's a loving gesture. Like, I'm not going to disturb her peace because of this, because my inability to communicate this prior or effectively, or whatever the case may be, this mix up, so to speak. So I'm anticipating, okay, I'm going to leave because there's going to be a time for me to come back to this. This conversation, it can, if we're intentional about it and we embrace it, is life changing
Mm,
because now most of us can sit back and say, okay, we're having these values. We can start to establish boundaries from this conversation, healthy
that's right.
boundaries. We can start to establish a peaceful way of being from this conversation. We can start to really embrace these different things because now we are in alignment with whatever it is. Once again, it's not going to be perfect. We're human beings. If it was perfect, then I guess it wouldn't even be fun at this point in time anymore. There's no lessons to be learned. There's no testimony to be had if it
Mm,
was perfect. But there's a learning that comes with it, that now that it provides us with this wisdom to move through life in a more effective way. It allows us to move through life in a more loving way, which ultimately, to me, that's where it is, right? So we get to do these things, but it starts off with these values and being in alignment with them and knowing when we're violating them. What an awesome conversation.
mm. I love it. And this accountability piece that you illuminated. See, relationships are like baking bread. It's like that's what relationships are like. They're like baking bread. If you don't preheat the oven, your bread's going to come out floppy. You got to preheat the oven. You can't just throw your bread in the oven. You can't go to the oven and set the oven and then just throw your bread in there and then just read the package and it says 20 minutes, because you go 20 minutes in a unpreheated oven and you've got like 5 to 10 minutes of the wrong temperature. It's got to be the right temperature from
Mm,
the start to the finish, or your bread is the inside is never going to cook. And that's the issue that we have in these relationships,
come
is the
on.
inside is never cooked. We're so busy glazing the outside, but when we get to the inside, it's undone.
Now you got to put it back in the oven. You don't know the exact what's going to happen, and you might burn it at this point in time. It might come out with the wrong texture. It might be that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what's going on, and we see it a lot. Like, you've had these conversations with these men, and I'm having the conversations as well on this side, and I'm like, oh, here was one thing that I came to a realization of. I said, you know what? A lot of us aren't coming out and saying exactly who we are. We jump into these things with masks on.
That's
And
it.
we're just like, yeah, 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 we and going along with everything. So this person gives you them. This is me. I got this going on. I got this going on. I got this going on. And you jump in, some people jump in wanting to be a savior. Some people just excited to be in something new or whatever it is, or avoidance or whatever it is. and then you just jump in and you just go along with it. And then a year, 2, 3 years down the line, because we didn't have these conversations or none of this stuff was brought up, now you want the real you to come out. And this person is just supposed to accept you for that. And they're like, well, wait a minute. I'm, we're both vested in this relationship, but you can't just come out and be an entirely different person for 2 to 3 years. And I'm not telling you at this point to throw the relationship away. What I'm telling you now is now, really, as a man, you got to start exercise different things. Now you got to start to exercise patience. You got to dig into that patience a little bit. You really got to dig into that compassion a little bit, because to abruptly change and expectations is going to cause disappointment. To expect someone to abruptly change with you, that's just not how it works. People got to even wonder, some people got to even wonder if this is something that I want to be in at this point in time. And some people check out and just looking for ways to exit at that point in time.
Mm,
Or they start to buck against the system. Like, "Well, listen, I hear everything. I know you decided that
mm,
today's the day that you're going to church, and you're in the, and you're going every Sunday, and you're going to Bible study and everything that. But when I met you this wasn't the value that you told me. Now you expect me to just show up, and I need to get a little bit more understanding. Where is this coming from? Now we have to exercise as a man, and leading. You have to exercise the compassion and the patience and the understanding of what needs to happen in order to make this happen. Not that it
mm,
can't happen, because all things are possible, but we need to start going into these resources. And ultimately, here's the next thing. We need to go seeking this from people. Now we got to go seek. Someone needs to go to you. Hey, brother, listen, because like you mentioned earlier, you can't necessarily see your blind sides. And I know you got this positive intention. I know we got this positive intention, because what's wrong with starting to go to church, right?
mm.
However,
Right.
that's just the manifestation of something. Because now that you wanted to go, something changed within you. Something changed. So now you got to start seeking. You got to start seeking these mentors. You need to start seeking coaching. You need to start seeking help to say, listen, how can I get through this? Because I know the way that I'm coming across. This person has experienced you for so long. They know this, and they know their experience of you. So for you to change, it's like, well, it starts to be a little bit unstable. So we got to take these different things into account as we I think as we grow.
Mm. That's beautiful. Beautifully stated. It opens up that conversation too about accountability. First off, accountability doesn't mean acceptability.
Mm-mm.
When we start to understand that, I think it changes things because simply because I have become accountable for my actions doesn't mean that somebody else is accepting the actions that I'm now accountable for. If my son breaks the banister, leaves my banister all broken up because he's playing around, and he comes to me, he's like, Dad, I broke the banister. And now I come out and I look at it, and there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, what were you doing, racing a go-kart in here? It doesn't mean that that is acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make me, I'm not happy now because you're owning up to it. So, men, if you decide you want to get it right, and now you go tell your wife, yes, I did wrong. That don't mean a hill of beans to her.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
You may end up getting, yeah, you did do wrong. You should be
Mm-hmm.
glad I'm still here. You got to take that.
Yep.
You got to be patient. You got
Mm.
to be hopeful. You got to be prayerful because just because you decided you were making that change today does not mean that she is ready to accept it today.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the other part to that. We make a lot of our changes from the inside out. Now, some people, they're making their changes from the outside in. And those that make their changes from the outside in, you're not going to win. That's that mask Mike is talking about. You're still wearing a mask. You're faking it so that you can make it. And the thing is that you're still a fake.
We could
That's
tell.
the truth. You're
And,
still a fake.
and we could tell. I can tell. Go ahead.
You can tell when somebody is
You could tell.
insincere. It shows up. It's not hard. It's like when you get into a conversation and somebody acts like they care about what you're saying, and as soon as they get the opportunity, they start telling you about their day. Like, well, hold on. I thought we were talking about my day. I thought you wanted to know how, you know what? Never mind. How was your day? Because obviously my day doesn't matter to you.
Right. At this time.
this we
Warming
have
you up.
we have to work from the inside. And when we do work from the inside, what I have found is that many guys are working from the inside, and maybe the ladies are too, but we're working from the inside. What do I mean by that? When you really want to have personal development take full capture of your body, you will start reading differently. You'll start listening to different stuff. You'll start watching different things. You'll start hanging around different people. And all of these things are internal mechanisms. You may not be, hey Mike, man, I'm reading this book by Brian Tracy. You know, and it's telling me about confidence. I say that. I say, hey, Mike, I got into this group where we are talking about choices. I say that. Hey, Mike, I stopped watching violent TV shows and now I'm just watching comedies or sports or inspirational things. I may not say all that, but I may do it.
Hmm.
And Mike may catch me here and there. Hey man, I thought you were watching the kung fu. No, man, man, lately I've just been watching sports. I may not mention all those things, but inside, I may be saying to myself intentionally, all right, I'm going to change this because I feel like I'm watching so much violent things that it's making my temper rise. I think that may be a part. Maybe it's the music I'm listening to. You know, and I'm going to stop listening to music with cuss words in it, and I'm only going to listen to instrumentals. I'm doing all of these things inside of my mind, but I'm not saying it.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, a year later, I'm a different person. All of a sudden, no, there was no all of a sudden. It was 365 days of preparation to become that different person. And it just so happens on the 366th day, somebody else recognized it.
Right.
And now I want everybody else to look just like me, talk just like me, walk just like me, simply because I made it through 365 days and I've changed. And now I feel as if on that next day, everybody else needs to do it in one day. It's like people that go on diets. They've been on diets for 3 years. They finally lost that 50 pounds. And then they walk up to a friend and say, why are you eating ice cream? What you mean, why am I eating ice cream? You know why I'm eating ice cream? Because ice cream tastes good. Yeah, but it's not good for you. It's got
Yeah.
all them calories. Shut up.
I love it. And you know what because I had that I've had that before. Because you want people to come with you. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like you want, I think most of us have a want or desire to elevate everyone that's around us. And it's a scary situation to step into a different realm without some any kind of comfortability. You know what I mean? Like you know when you go out, if you want someone, you go to a new networking event. I remember we used to go to the club. A lot of people don't just want to go to the club alone. They want to go to the club or go someplace with somebody because it's comfortable to bring people along with you. And you also feel of sometimes we can feel or not allow people to have their journey. So we want them to skip these certain parts because change is it can be scary. It can be
yeah,
different. It requires you to become something that you haven't done before. Some people would call it hard work. Some people would call it doing the work. right? Like all these things take place to it. Like I mentioned, 18 months, 18 months, and I got and after 18 months, you don't even realize how much has changed. And then you're having this conversation, and only when you reflect, like, oh my God, I just had this 2 hour conversation and we covered all this stuff. It took me 6 months to cover this stuff initially, and I just covered it in a 2 hour conversation. Got it, heard some things, threw some things out, stopped the conversation because it was going in a direction that wasn't going to behoove me. You know, or behoove this conversation. So we want people to kind of be there, but we do have to allow people their journey, and through our being, through the way that we show up, like that's the biggest way to compel somebody into doing something different. Man, I love the way Joe's relationship with his wife is. Initially, it might bother me. I don't know, why they always so nice to each other? I don't know. I'm not nice. We don't. It's a facade, but month after month, nah, there's something there, and I kind of that's dope. Okay, cool. Joe, what are you doing? Oh, we've been working on this for. We've been intentional about working on this. Well, what do you mean? Oh yeah, we've been intentional, and this happened, and we're having these type of conversations, and it's no longer, we're actually intentionally having these conversations every 3 months or every month or whatever it is. We know to check in. We're going on date nights, this time. Like we're scheduling these things out. We're not leaving this up to chance. One
Mm,
of the one of the cra-
mm,
one of the things that you don't want to do, well, not don't, because it's happening right now. It's happening to a
mm,
lot of people right now. Is that we wait until tragedy to attempt to figure something out. We don't prepare for it. We don't think about it, or matter of fact, not that we don't think about it. We intentionally avoid having these different conversations. And then all of a sudden, when something happens, now we're trying to pick up all these different behaviors, which we're attempting to be this different thing, right? There's a Jamaican saying that says, "When trouble takes you, a man can put on a child's shirt." Now all of a sudden we trying to put on this child's shirt,
mm.
which is super uncomfortable. We're in this tight shirt and everybody sees it, right? That's we kind of spoke about that earlier. This false way of being. Everybody sees you putting on this you have on this tiny shirt. Some, maybe somebody will walk up and tell you, but oftentimes people aren't. People are gonna be like, man, we're gonna talk about you. People will talk
Mm.
about you. They're not gonna bring it to your attention, and you thinking that you're getting away with it. Well, yeah, I'm just gonna keep it on for this short while, or maybe I can fit this shirt, or maybe because this trouble is happening to you. Start to prepare now.
That's
Start
it.
to become intentional today. Mike, what I become intentional? I don't even know what it is. Just start to become aware. You can just start there. I'm aware of these things. This is not necessarily what it is that I want. And then now you can start to say, well, what is it that I do want? What does that look like?
Mm.
What kind of conversations do I need to have? What kind of what does the people I need to be around? But what kind of books do I need to start reading? What kind of music should I be listening to if that's the case? And really start to become intentional about it.
Just take that question that Mike gave. Mike, the question that you gave last episode, that's the perfect place to start. If you're by yourself, I think that I want to say that it's a little bit easier because
Yeah.
you are by yourself and it's only your value. But
Yep.
that question, how much focus and energy are you putting into making your value system known within inside of your family, within inside of your construct, within inside of your friendship, within inside of your business relationship, whatever that is, that matters so much. Now, if it's just you, then take out a sheet of paper and write down 20 things that you value. And I say 20 things so that you can get to the furthest extent, so that you can exhaust yourself, because it's going to be hard to get to 20 things, maybe. But write those things down and then go back through them and see and try to figure out the reason why. But if you're with somebody else, do this with them.
Yeah.
Let them write down what they value. You write down what you value. Get it all out. Don't leave anything out. And then once that you have that list, prioritize that list,
Yep.
rearrange it 1 through 20, so that when you get ready to speak about it, and that's why I believe this exercise is good done with your spouse,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that now you don't step into that conversation with these preconceived notions about how your priority list or an item on your priority list is greater than somebody else's because you've had time to think about it and you had time to
Mm.
weigh it out. No, it needs to be fresh. Y'all both sit down at the same time, you get the same amount of time, and then you prioritize it, and then you go through it. And if you want to change something while you're going through it, change it. Be open, be honest, because that's what this is about. It's about integrity, and it's about blending your value system together. It's not about mine is better than yours.
Nope.
It's knowing what she thinks, what she feels is at the top, so that when the day comes, because it's going to come, like it did for me just a few days ago, I had something that I had a high value, and she was doing something that was at a high value. And if I had tried to knock her high value thing off, then it would have sent us back. It would have sent us backwards. Could I have muscled my way through? Oh, sure, I could. I could muscle my way through. I could have. I've done it before in the past. That's how I know these things. But if I had done that, it would have cost us so much in our relationship because it was a high value thing and it was a last minute decision. And if you do these things ahead of time, it's no longer a last minute thing. Peter Drucker said, he stated that what gets measured gets improved. If we take the time to lay out our value system with our spouse, with our significant other, with our business partner, if we do that and reevaluate it at some given time, then we know where we stand and we can measure the success on that. And the other thing about it is the accountability becomes easy because now, if we've talked about it and we barely mention this word consistency, but if we have consistently brought up our value system, if it is a part of our mission, our household vision, our household philosophy, if we consistently put it out there, like Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 6 through 9, if we talk about it when we sit down, if we talk about it while we walk in the way, if we put it as frontlets on the eyes, if we wrap it around our wrists, if we put it on the doorposts of our homes,
Yep.
on we put it on the wall of our business, if we lay it there where everyone can see it and they have to visit it and they have to read it day in and day out, it becomes something that is common. It becomes something that is a pillar. It's something that we must live by because we agreed to it. Everyone had their opportunity to say whatever it was on the day of the conversation. And every time it's brought up, we've had an opportunity to amend or to leave it be. And if we're doing those types of things, yeah, now it's time to hold people accountable.
Yep.
Now you can say, but we agreed to this. And we had the conversation 2 months after, and we agreed again. And the year after, we had the conversation. Why today? And then you could ask the question. And if it was simply because their value system, something in their value system rose up higher, then you can accept it and say,
Hmm.
okay, but I need you to communicate that with me. I
Yep.
need you to tell me about it. Don't bring it up to me at the last moment. Or you can say, no, now that's wrong because we agreed. This ain't a you, it ain't a me thing. It's
Hmm.
a we agreed to this. It's a we thing. And
Hmm.
your part violated our agreement.
Right.
You can call people to the table now.
I love it. It's not about perfection, people. This is not about perfection. These things are gonna happen. There's emotions going on. There's things just happen in life. That things just come up in life. So it's not a perfection thing. It's just it's a consistency thing. It's a stable thing. Just even in the way, brother, that you said, like, this is a we thing. This comes from a calm and stable place. This is not coming out of, what they call it when it comes out of left field.
Left field.
Yeah, this is coming out of left field. I didn't see it coming. No, we now it can be calm and stable
You
when I
saw it
approach it.
coming.
Right.
You thought about this. You
But
chose not to go along with this because it's our value.
but here's the thing, and not but, I hate saying but. And here's the thing, and they say in boxing, is that you can take the punch when you see it coming.
Mm,
Like, you can take the punch when you see both of us could take the punch, because now we're not coming from this place of, oh, I gotta, I'm shaky. I ain't know, I don't know where this Mike Tyson uppercut came from. I saw it happening, right? So you're more likely to take the punch when it happens, when you can see it coming. That's a better. Let me rephrase that. You're more likely to be able to take the punch. You can brace for this punch, so to speak. And not a perfection thing. This is just us having this communication thing and having open communication. Once again, now I'm not walking on eggshells. I'm not guessing these different things.
mm,
I'm anticipating these things, these needs, this thing that's supposed to happen. And guess what? If this happens to where I don't want to do it, now you can be truthful in your in what you got to say. Listen, I know I just can't do it.
mm,
There's a resistance there. And now we can work on this resistance as opposed to the aftermath of the
mhm,
resistance. Well, what's keeping you from doing this thing? Or what's keeping us from having this conversation? Like, whatever that we can work on those things specifically. And I would imagine that that's what most people want. We don't just want to walk around just kind of guessing where we stand or what's going on or
mm.
how things are going to play out.
I like
Yeah,
it.
get these things down, man. Maybe one day we can work on what I call, well, what not what I call, what is called a value elicitation. I was
Mm,
looking at something that we have written in our notes, and it says valuing yourself. Well, how
mm,
can you value yourself or understand your worth? We defined value and what valuing yourself was, but how can we do that when we aren't clear and on our values? How can someone else see it? I know we can. I know we're human. We're just supposed to give people intrinsic value, but we would want to know, well, where did, how do I value this person in my life? Well, what are our values? What do we value? And we start from there. Value
mm.
elicitation.
I love it.
Yeah,
I
brother.
love it. I think that takes us back a few episodes just to the who am I?
Mm-hmm.
Just learning that individual. Y'all go back and look at that. Go back and look at that because it does have a lot to do with that value elicitation. Well, it has a lot to do with who am I?
Yeah.
What values do I bring to the table? And do I even know what those values are?
Right.
And being confident in that gives me
Yeah.
the ability to speak it without stuttering. I don't have to wear a mask when I walk up to the table with Mike because I know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to do it with my wife. I know who I am. So sometimes we don't know who we are. And so what we end up doing is we just, hey man, put this mask back on and see how long we can get by like that. But it doesn't work. Man, this is fruitful, fruitful.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome conversation, people. We love you. I think we'll post this again at 6:30. We'll see. Um, check it out. Reach out to us if you need us. Other than that, love you. Peace.
Peace.